Okay, we're back with some of the analysis now of Where the Red Fern Grows. And with Where the Red Fern Grows, we are covering the vocabulary, the figurative language, and information about the characters. So the first thing that I have noted here on the first page of chapter 4 is a hyperbole. I flew to the store. Pretty sure he didn't actually fly. So that's a hyperbole. It's an extreme exaggeration. This one says he would smile and wink at me. This is Grandpa's. Grandpa plays a pivotal role in the entire movie, and so anytime we can look for information about him earlier in the movie, in the book, anytime we can find information about him, we definitely want to highlight it, and depot is one of our vocab words. So on this page first, let's look at the figurative language. We have a hyperbole where it says, I may as well have exploded a bomb. Oh, in 7th grade, I meant to tell you, when I turn the page, after you get all your highlighting done, you can, pause or unpause the video as you need to get all that taken care of. The days dragged by. Terrible thoughts ran through my mind. These are things that can't actually happen. The days aren't dragging anything, and the thoughts aren't running. So that is an example of personification. Over here it says, in a flash I made up my mind. That's a hyperbole. A flash is like really quick, and usually our thought process takes a little longer than that. An idiom, if you remember, an idiom is one of those types of language where we know what it means, even though that's not what the words say. It says, I went as the crow flies. We know that means that he's going straight there, that he's not going to follow the roads to get there. He's just going to take a trail and go straight where he's trying to get. The figurative language is highlighted. We have gunny sack, we have a riffle, and we have scatted. And then we have the information that we're learning in this chapter about Billy, first of all. Mom is worried about Billy in this little piece here. Down here we have Billy worrying. He's worrying all about himself. We have Billy and Papa over here. First is Billy. He's talking about how he intends to tell his dad, but then he doesn't. And then he's talking a little bit about his dad being a kind and gentle person. And now here Billy's made up his mind to do something, and he is taking the steps that he needs to get that done. Turn the next page. More on this page about Billy. First, I'll go through that. So we have him describing himself. He's got the wind of a deer, the muscles of a country boy. He's out there. He's out taking on the world. Then we see how determined he is. We see that determination and grit all through the story for him. So his bare feet are getting sore, and he's still walking. Here it says that he's afraid of Tahlequah. He had never seen such a big town. He's definitely been a boy that's stayed in the hills and stayed around hunting and doing all the fun things that a country boy gets to do. And this, I've highlighted like around the side of these 3 paragraphs down here, where Billy is looking in the mirror for the first time in his life and seeing his reflection. So that's why I've got the highlight of orange over there to the side, where Billy is noticing what he looks like. Now we'll look at the figurative language. We have a couple of examples of personification. First, we have that the pangs of hunger are gnawing at his stomach. The hunger can't gnaw. It doesn't eat anything. It doesn't have teeth. So that's definitely a personification. And then over here, his eyes did pop open. All on their own is what it sounds like. And we know that a person has to open their eyes. They don't do things on their own. A hyperbole over here, it says his blood boiled. If your blood actually boiled, you wouldn't so much be alive. So we know that that's an exaggeration. And then we have several similes. This one says a bright, shiny star on his vest looked as big as a bucket. So we have that comparison being made to the shiny star looking big as a bucket. We have one over here. It says that his straw-colored hair was long and shaggy and brushed out like a corn tassel. We've got that word like, making that comparison a simile. They were as brown as dead sycamore leaves. So that's that using the other word, like or as. So this one uses as. And so that's a simile. And it was as red as pokeberry juice, so that's another simile on that page. Let's turn the page. We have some more highlighted here on Billy. He's talking about how he realizes, he knows he's done something wrong in leaving home, but he's going to do something to try to make up for that once he gets there. And then we have a simile down here. The lawns were neat and clean and looked like green carpets. That use of the word like makes it a simile. The boys and girls were about my age and were as thick as flies around a sorghum mill. So sorghum is, it's a form of sugar. I marked this one as both a simile and an idiom because it's a comparison using like or as, so that makes it a simile. But we also have this thick as flies, and that's a phrase that we use that people know. They weren't actually as thick as flies, but we kind of know what that means when someone says that, meaning that there are a lot of people there in one area. Let's turn the page. On the next page, we have a couple of similes and an onomatopoeia. So the simile is we have the children that are marching like little tin soldiers. It's a very interesting image of children lined up and going back into school. And on this page, we have my legs were spread out like a bean shooter stalk. So another example of a simile on that page using like or as. And then onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is that word whoosh. It says the air is whooshing between his teeth, and onomatopoeia is when words are used to make sounds. Going to chapter 5. Now we're going to start to get some where we learn more about the dogs and their personalities and how he sees them. So that's why I have old Dan here. It says one part started my way, I held my breath, on he came, that's how I know it's little Dan, and the other pup followed, a warm puppy tongue caressed my sore foot. So we're learning about old Dan here. And back up there just a little bit, it says, I didn't answer, I couldn't, all I could do was stare at them. We see a very excited and eager young man, not quite sure what to do. Also marked on this page, I have a personification. My heart jumped clear up in my throat. Well, your heart can't jump, so that makes it a personification. And a simile, here's that word like that we look for when we have a simile. It says, my heart started acting like a drunk grasshopper. I'm not sure what a drunk grasshopper acts like. I've never seen one, but I get the feeling it might be a little weird looking. 38 and 39, I've got a lot more with Billy. The people are staring at him, and he's feeling like he's going to be all proud and everything, and then he gets on, he throws out his chest, and he gets on the street. Here he's even staying there. People are jealous. And over here he gets angry. He thinks the women are making fun of him, and so he makes fun of them back. And down here it says, I hurt like the dickens, but I gritted my teeth and walked on. So when somebody's stomping on his foot, it's his pain. I guess he can handle it. And he's decided he doesn't want to get in a fight over it. Then we have onomatopoeia, so they swished on down the street. We can almost hear those long skirts swishing when we hear that word. We have a simile, my face was as red as a fox's tail. Comparison using the like or as. And an idiom, the chickens coming home to roost. They flocked around me. So that's an idiom because when the chickens, at the end of the day, the chickens come back to their roost, whether or not they have been called or anything like that, just because they don't like the dark and they can't see in the dark. So the chickens come home to roost. That is an idiom. It is a phrase that is used that we all know what it means. In the next page, we have a little more information about Billy. And when he could handle the pain for himself, apparently, when somebody messed with his puppies, he got over angry, and he actually went, and if you're reading down on this page, we can see that he is going after those boys that are hurting his dog. Hurting him, he can walk on. Hurting his dog, he can't handle it. And over here he says, Marshall, I wouldn't have fought them, but they pulled my pup's ears. So that's supporting what we're learning here about Billy and how strong his character is when he feels that someone around him has been wronged. In our figurative language, we have, first of all, it says it took a Jack Dempsey stance. Jack Dempsey was a boxer, and somebody's taking a Jack Dempsey stance. We should get a picture. An illusion is what that's referred to as. We have the illusion there that we know what that looks like if we knew who Jack Dempsey was. This hyperbole, he's not reaching all the way back into Arkansas with his fist. That'd be an awfully long way for your hand to travel. But we get the picture that he's really winding up and he's really going to smack him. We have a simile here and here. This is shaking his hand and yelling like the hoot owls were after him, and croaking like a bullfrog. So Billy's laying into those kids and making sure they don't mess with his puppies again. Next page. We have a personification. Let's do that one first. The night overtook me. So as he's walking, it's like the night is catching up with him. And of course, we know the night can't do much of anything all by itself. It's not a person. And then we're going to learn about Billy here, and old Dan over here. Is Billy here. He found his pups. He found a wonderful friend, and he had decided he was going to change his mind about sheriffs and marshals because of the man that he met. And down here is when he starts to talk about his puppies and notice their individual characteristics. So I marked that one. Next page. Old Dan, more of that physical description of him, and then he's talking about how his character develops, how he's going to try to solve a problem, get himself into trouble, but solve a problem. Down over here on Old Dan, we see Old Dan he's running out there when there's trouble. He's going to go after it and try to scare away that cat. And we have little Ann here. She's talking about her being timid, but she's smarter than the boy dog. So we've got some information here on little Ann and the kind of dog that she is. Right over here, we can see Billy getting nervous when he's faced with some dangers out in the woods. And we have a personification and hyperbole here. So it says the sound is screaming its way into the cave and rang like a blacksmith's anvil against the rock. So that's personification, because of course sound doesn't do anything all by itself, but it's being made here to scream, and it's ringing like a blacksmith's anvil. Now over here it says the blood froze in my veins. Obviously the blood can't freeze in your veins or you wouldn't be alive. That's definitely a hyperbole. Next page. We have Billy. I figured out the lion had scented my pups. So he's noticing here that how strongly he already feels just in one day about his dogs, as I was ready to die for my dogs. And more about old Dan, we see the boy dog is running out to the mouth of the cave and yelling back at that cat every time it howls. In the beginning of chapter 6, it says, finally I decided I would just tell him the truth. So he's trying to figure out what he's going to tell his parents, and he can't quite figure it out, but he finally just goes with the truth. And here, then this has to do with the writing prompt that you have with this chapter, with this section. This is where he is talking about how he's realizing that fate may have had something to do with this whole, him getting the dogs and everything. And he's feeling a great deal of gratitude here towards God for guiding him and getting stuff done that he wanted to get done. Over here we have Billy says he's reaching the gate to the house. He's stopped. And he's thinking his home looks pretty. He's been away for a couple of days. He's been in the city. And now all of a sudden, his home looks better than he thought it had before. We have Billy and Mama down here because we have, she's looking up. She's worried and scared, even though they have found out where he had gone or figured out where he had gone. And Billy is feeling bad. So he and his mom have a good relationship. Next one down here, Papa's getting up and he's laughing. So he's so happy to see his son that he's laughing about it. And he's trying to figure out what there is in that sack. And down here we have Billy, and he's running to his mom and burying his face in her lap. They are definitely glad to be reunited. Next page. Got vocab up here, and here, and here. So we got a lot of vocab on this sheet, or this page. And then we have a little bit about Billy and his family, where he realizes that everything was forgiven when he gets home and he brings home the stuff, and nobody's giving him any trouble at all. Everybody's just forgiving him for what he's done. But here I marked this one as foreshadowing. It says, they'll never bother you unless they're wounded or cornered, but if they are, you better look out. So foreshadowing is that literary element where there's something that's said earlier in the story that foreshadows or tells of things that are to come later in the story. So that there is an example of foreshadowing in this chapter. Next page. We have more foreshadowing. Someday you won't have to live in town. Your mother and I don't intend to live in these hills all of our lives. And that foreshadowing is of them moving at some point in time. It's kind of wrapped up in this information about Papa. And Papa's talking about his children shouldn't live in a place where they don't get to have an education. Mama reiterates that down here. And he also find out more about where he gets his faith. He says, I'll just keep praying, and someday the good Lord may answer my prayer. So that idea of Billy's prayers being answered here, we have Mama having her prayers answered. And over here is where he's talking about how he believes that God heard his prayer and is helping him out. And he and his mother are having a good conversation about that. Back over on this page, I have marked that I had to answer 1,000 questions for my sisters, and there must have been at least 1,000 kids going to school there. Those are both examples of hyperboles. It's not 1,000 questions, and there weren't 1,000 children. Let's turn the page, and that is it for those chapters.